Welcome back to FastGadgets. Glad to be back. Just for those of you who are curious, I am back home now. I'm on blood thinners to protect me from blood clots and to help reduce the blood clots that I do have. So I'm feeling a lot better, and I just want to get right into the video, but I did want to give you that update. If you're not aware, Fedora 26 has been released, and of course I'm a Fedora user. I have been since actually before Fedora. I was using Red Hat. If you are curious, you can go to the Fedora project wiki, and I'll go ahead and put this URL in the notes for this video down below. But you can have a look at all the different updates that they're doing. And we did talk about these in the Fedora 26 alpha video that I released about a month ago. So of note was the fast caching for local users, and we also talked about Gnome 3.24, so we'll get a quick look at that. Probably won't see much of a difference over the Gnome 3X that we were using before. The old Synaptics driver is going to retire. Fedora 26C and C++ flag updates, OpenSSL update, and a new version of DNF that'll hopefully make things a little bit easier. We shall see. And then some self-contained changes. There's quite a list here, so you should have a look at it if you're thinking about going with Fedora 26. And of course, there's details in each of the changes, so if you were curious about exactly what it's going to do for you, you can click the link and get more information on that particular change. Now, you may notice that I'm in Windows 10, and here's the thing, I get a lot of questions about that. Mark, why are you in Windows 10? Well, I'll tell you, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, it's the fastest system I have. So if we cruise over into, actually, what's an easier way to do it? I'm running this on my Yoga 910, which is an i7, and I have 16 gigs of memory, and it of course is running an SSD. So this is literally my fastest computer. And the other cool thing about it is that I get hardware support for OBS, so that really helps when I'm running OBS, and I am right now to do this recording. So what I do when I'm testing out a new release of an operating system, so before, keeping in mind that my Yoga 910 is a dual boot, before I upgrade Fedora 25 to Fedora 26, I really want to see how things are behaving. It didn't work too well in VirtualBox, which kind of surprised me when I was doing a virtual machine of Fedora 26 Alpha. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use a virtual machine. So that's the first thing I like to do, is try to run the Perspective. And no, it's not Fedora 32, the Perspective operating system that I'm interested in running. Only 32-bit. I wonder if my BIOS, if you've been watching my videos, I got a BIOS update, UEFI BIOS update. I bet I have to go into my BIOS and turn back on VT support. Why do I have this bad alpha feeling? Which is really going to put a monkey wrench in things, because I'll have to shut everything down, reboot, and go through everything again. It's saying 32-bit. I think it's reading my BIOS settings. Well, I'm going to try and go ahead and create the machine and see what happens. And we'll dynamically allocate. And I usually increase this. You just never know what you're going to want to do with your virtual machine in the future. You know, since it's dynamically allocated, it's a non-issue, you know, because if you're only going to use 8 gigabytes of that space, you're only going to use 8 gigabytes, the N. Okay, so I went ahead and created the virtual machine, and I'm going to do start. It should ask me for an ISO. Try that again. And I have a 64-bit ISO, so I'm betting you right now. Yeah, I can pretty much see how this is going to go. I'm going to end up having to shut the system down, go back in there. I tell you what, Windows 10 forced a BIOS update on me, and it's been nothing but a pain in my butt. It's caused real problems for me. Let's go to select. That's the other thing about Windows 10. Pop behinds instead of pop ups. People say, oh no, it's not Windows 10 fault. Windows 10 is perfect. There are some serious Windows 10 lovers out there. Where did I put that? I think I just threw it in downloads. Probably should have paid more attention. Yeah, right there. And we want to make sure, yeah, it's today's. So this is not going to work. I'm assuming it is not going to work. Well, so far it's working. Let's go to view and do scale factor 200. And I have some options here. Start Fedora workstation, test this media. We'll just do start. It's really strange that they all said this kernel requires an x86 64 CPU but only detected an i686 CPU. Alright. So this is going to take a little while. I'm going to have to shut down OBS and come back. So I got to completely reboot the computer. And thank you again, Windows 10, for installing that BIOS update for me and changing all of my settings. And again, finding another setting that's been changed. Thank you, Windows 10. Thank you. Alright, well, we're back again. Hopefully things are going to work this time. And I don't understand this. Basically, any application that's not a Windows app, notice all the text, perfect sizing here. A non-Windows app, text is 5,000 times bigger than it's supposed to be. I'm just going to delete this virtual machine. So we'll remove it, delete all files, new. And you'll see now that we're able to select 64-bit. What a miracle. Imagine that. I really come to hate Windows. I like it and hate it both at the same time. So I've got 16 gigs, so I don't know, 4 gigabytes RAM. Create a virtual disk now. Use VDI, dynamically allocate. Create. You know what? I wanted to change the size of that disk. Well, let's see what's going to happen. I'm sure I can't. Okay, storage. Fedora 26 VDI. Yeah, we're going to have to delete. Add. Don't want to add a controller. We want to add a disk. Hard disk. Create new. Next. Next. Let's go ahead and put in 60. No. 60 gigabytes. Create. I don't know why I called new virtual disk 1, but whatever. And we're going to power it up. And should... No bootable medium found. Normally it asks you for that bootable media, but apparently not this time. Go to optical drives. Choose disk image. It looks like it was already in there, so I don't know what that's all about. And Fedora Workstation Live, that's my new one. Bad news, but it booted from it before, so why won't it boot from it now? And reset. Reset. And this time it does. We'll scale it up a little bit there, make it easy for everybody to see. And let's see what happens. Hopefully it'll start up. It's always good to start with errors. I'm going to change this view just a little bit, scale it down to 175, make sure it's all fitting. Okay, that's me, live system user. Woo woo! Now at this point none of my tools are installed, of course. You know, I think I only assigned one core, but I guess that's fine. I mean, that's good enough. Let's install the hard drive. I always like to get the install done. See if it can actually do the installation to the virtual machine okay. Oh, let's see. We want English. We'll continue. And automatic partitioning I am going to agree to, and I'm going to use the 60 gigabyte virtual disk. I gotta scroll up and click done. Usually takes a little while, so while I'm waiting I'm going to scale down again to 125. I'm pretty sure I clicked done, but we'll just click it a couple more times. You know how those things are. And we'll begin installation. And I'm going to set a root password. And I will click done. I'm going to create a user. I always do. And I'm going to make this user a part of sudo. They call it administrator now because so many Windows users don't understand what sudo is. That's okay. And put in a password. I don't think that's the password I wanted, but hey, you know how it goes. See if they're actually the same as far as passwords go. I guess so. And it looks like it's around 22%. What I really like to do is get the operating system installed, get the tools installed for VirtualBox, and finally do a update. Now sometimes it's better to do the update first because invariably one thing or another doesn't work quite right, so I will go ahead and do an update. Okay, so the installer is completed. I'm going to go ahead and click quit here, and I really think I'm going to wait to install the tools. As a matter of fact, I think there's a couple of things I need to install to get the tools working correctly anyway, so let's go ahead and really quickly here restart the system. And while I do the restart, I think I'm going to yank the disk from the virtual drive and I'll force an unmount. That way we boot right to the operating system. So we should be booting to Fedora 26 version 4.11.0-300 on the core there. Or a kernel, I'm sorry. And we'll see how long it takes it to boot up. Many people think that Fedora is an experimental arm of Red Hat, and that is not correct. It's definitely a stable release, and it is an industry standard stable release for workstations. So I'm going to go ahead and log in here. And it's almost like it's a rolling release, to be honest. It's just that they changed the version numbers. The differences between, say, Fedora 25 and Fedora 26 aren't huge. They're really evolutionary. as far as, you know, the changes that you can expect. It's not like it's night and day. I think the big thing was when they went to the Gnome 3X interface. That was a revolutionary large change, and many people didn't like that. And I do get a lot of opinion on which particular desktop environment people like. A lot of people say KDE, some come and say Cinnamon, and so on and so forth. And it all just depends what you like. I mean, that's really the bottom line. Well, I don't need the common tasks. So we've got it installed, but I suppose, no, you know what? Last time when I tried to install the tools, it failed. And it needed kernel headers, and when I got the new kernel headers, it just caused all kinds of problems. So I think what I'm going to do is start the terminal. This is always the first thing I do, and I'll add it to favorites. And again, this is something I've been criticized about. A couple of people watching my Linux videos always say, well, you know, the problem is the first thing you do is go right to the terminal. And yes, that is true. I do go right to the terminal because it's Linux. That's where all the work is. Okay, maybe you know, once everything's set up the way I want it to, then I don't really use the terminal all that much unless I'm monitoring some aspect of the operating system. But software tools, you know, editing and things like that, well, I can do that without the terminal, of course, right? So let's do a DNF update and see how many updates are available for it right now, considering it just came out. But that's the cool thing I do like about Linux in general. You choose when to install the updates and what updates specifically. So in this case, I'm running DNF update. I could have done a -y and just told it to mandatorily install the updates, but in this case, I want to see what updates are available and how many, and then go from there. Okay, so there's only 268 megabytes, so I'm going to go ahead and say, let's do it. And do the update installs. Download's going really fast, so I don't think it's going to take very long. Then I'll install, I think I need kernel headers and kernel devel. And I'm pretty sure I'll need GCC and a couple other things. Usually what happens if you try to install the Oracle VirtualBox tools so that you get the graphics driver and you can dynamically resize the screen here and all that, you need a couple of components, and they give you hints on what you need to install. So I just usually try the install and go ahead and do the install when it asks, you know, what it asks me to, what packages I need, you know. So if it tells me I need kernel headers, I just install them. I don't think the command line is a big mystery, but the thing is, I've been using the command line since I was very young. I started out on DOS back in the 80s, so I'm used to the command line. Many people don't like it and they're intimidated by it or just plain don't want to bother with it. And to some extent I understand that, but you know, even in Windows, I don't know how many know, well, most people know there's a command line, but the fact is, from a server standpoint, Microsoft has done a pretty good job of ensuring that everything you do in the graphical interface on a server, and to some extent a workstation, for administration of the operating system, you can do from the command line, and that's really powerful. And I think it's important when you think of scale. So if you're dealing with an Active Directory domain and you have 5,000 systems, you don't want to have to go into the graphical interface manually and change each one. You want to be able to do something quickly and easily to multiple systems at once, and you can do that with scripting on the command line, and it makes things a lot easier. Alright, so all the updates are done. If I tried to install the kernel headers right now, I don't think it would work, because it would try to install the old kernel headers that would be called based on the current kernel that's installed. I have to reboot to get the updated kernel into memory, so it really wouldn't work. So I'm going to issue a reboot here, and we're going to reboot the virtual machine, and when it finishes its reboot, there's the new kernel 4.11.9-300. I can do kernel headers, and I'm going to want to change the SE Linux enforcing rule to disabled. Oops, didn't really want to do that. Alright, so I'll get logged back in. I'm going to try and take care of the majority of the things that would cause me an error when I install the VirtualBox tools. It does boot up quite fast for a virtual machine with one core, so I'm actually pleased with that. I'll just go ahead and become sudo again. And I'm going to see if GCC is installed, kernel-headers, and kernel-devel. Whoops. Oops, that's not a... There we go. That should work. So it looks like headers is already installed, so we'll get devel, and it looks like GCC is already installed. That's good. And once this gets done installing, so far I'm really happy. Compared to the alpha code, things are running swimmingly. Remember, in Fedora 26 Alpha, we didn't get anywhere near this close. So let's get enforce and find out what SE Linux is doing, and right now it's enforcing. We can do a man on set enforce and see what our options are. So we can do permissive, which is a temporary change. So we will set enforce permissive. And I think I've done all I can do at this point. So now I could go up to optical drives. We'll actually do insert guest edition CD-ROM. I think there's one more thing I have to do, so I'm expecting some type of error. But we'll try anyway, right? I'll click run. Type in my handy dandy password. And I'm just about 99% sure it's going to bark about something, but I may have covered everything. We shall see. It's always on the compile. It's either SE Linux or a missing package it needs, or one other setting. I always forget. Alright, that's really encouraging. So we did get all of our settings right. We got kernel header, kernel devel, and we made sure we did it after we did a reboot, so we got the right header files. And GCC was already installed, and then we set enforce, or in other words changed SE Linux to permissive, and it seemed to work. Now, of course, unfortunately, in order to get the driver to take effect, we do need to do a reboot again. But when we reboot back up, we should be able to scale and do full screen and some things like that. So I'm going to click enter. So this is going perfectly as far as a virtual machine install goes compared to the Fedora 26 alpha code. This is very encouraging for me, and I am pretty sure I will do an upgrade to Fedora 26 on my actual hardware. Really, I do like to wait, but I'm feeling pretty confident. I'll probably wait another week or two. Let's go ahead and change the view scale factor. We're going to try 100%. And I'm going to go to view, and do full screen mode and see what it does. So you notice all the text and everything is really tiny, and that's mainly because I'm running this virtual machine. And normally, if I was running on the hardware, Gnome would pick up pretty well and scale everything nicely for me. And really what's going on here is that it cannot detect properly the screen resolution and scale the text and other things. Although I can install a tweak tool. Let's go to software. Let's go shopping. This is all working much faster. I don't know if anybody remembers the alpha video, but this part here literally took 5 or 10 minutes to load. I probably cut it for you, but it was terrible. And let's do a search. And we'll grab the Gnome tweak tool and we'll do an installation. And try to remember I'm running this on 1/2 of 1 core if you think about it. So VirtualBox is seeing 4 cores. I've got 2 cores and each one has 2 threads each, so it really has 4 cores. You know, 2, whatever, you get it. And I only assigned 1 core. So it's only really running on 1/2 a core right now, and it's doing quite good. I did give it 4 gigabytes of RAM. I'm really glad I got the upgraded 910, Yoga 910, because it's got the 16 gigs of RAM, which I really like having. I'm going to be using the Avid Media Composer editor to edit a 16mm film that I shot with a couple of partners years back, and I'm really going to need to be able to utilize that memory because they recommend 8 gigabytes of memory minimum for Avid Media Composer. So not sure if it's actually been installed or not. I guess we can find out. Nope. Doesn't look like yet. Let's try this tweak. Yeah, it does look like it was installed. Okay, so what I could do now with the tweak tool is I can actually boost the font size here. You can see them growing. So I can scale it to be more size appropriate for my 1920 by 1080 resolution. And this computer of course does 4K. Gnome does fine in 4K, but applications not usually so. I probably can give you an example here if I run Firefox. Not a very good example because we're in 1920 by 1080, but basically with Firefox normally all the screens here are super tiny. Let's go to one that probably isn't scaling. Here, we'll do this. Scaling pretty good, so I don't know if there's been some updates on app scaling, but things are looking quite nice. I'm actually impressed. Not one hiccup in this base install. So, you know, right now I've got a usable system that I can do things with as it is. Now, I would have to install... Actually, we'll just leave that open, won't we? Let's go ahead and see if there's a way to... I really can't minimize it, can I? In order to be able to do that, I'd have to cruise back over to the tweak tool. And on the top bar, I think it is, or is it Windows? Windows. Turn on the maximize and turn on the minimize. One of the first things I do. Do they have any other? Just the default in dark. I'm not really that big of a fan of dark. I usually leave it light. Now, yeah, normally I do end up installing Plasma, KDE Plasma, because my favorite editor is Kdenlive. And at least before, I guess we'll try it right now, see what happens, but if I do a sudo dnf install Kdenlive, I think I've got to have a certain repository in order to get that. So we do have Fedora 26 support for RPM Fusion. You know, it's funny because usually if I try to do this, the install fails and I have to go do it by the command line. I'm going to say install and hopefully it'll work this time. So far so good. Okay, RPM Fusion is installed. So theoretically now, if I do that same command, not that one, this one, I should be able, strange, graphical setup via Firefox browser, enable access to the free repository. Once that succeeds, you can enable non-free. One more RPM. Thing is, Kdenlive is free. So I'm not sure why I need non-free. Okay, so those are both installed. Any other steps I need to do? Shouldn't be. Yeah, it looked for RPM Fusion right there. That's odd. Okay, yeah, I'm just going to do sudo bash and then I can do dnf install. I think it was the capital letters. Whoa, look at all that supporting stuff that needs to be installed. 192 megs, compressed 827. I'm going to see if I can install Kdenlive without the KDE Plasma interface, which I used to be required. Well, I shouldn't say it was required. You know, every time I tried to run Kdenlive, it would ask for one package or another over and over and over again, and I finally got tired of it, so I just installed KDE. And I actually came to like KDE better. So that's what I use normally as my desktop environment the majority of the time. But this is just some testing. And so far, Fedora 26 definitely seems stable and robust, even though we're only running it as a virtual machine. But compared to alpha days, we are seeing no errors of any sort or issues. So that's definitely telling for me. I think we're going to be in good shape. And I feel very confident to upgrade to Fedora 26 on my actual hardware. Installs are going really fast for processing that I've given this virtual machine. I could have given it a lot more. Alright, so theoretically Kdenlive is installed. So if we go to activities and start typing, let's see if it'll launch. So far, no. Oop. Odd. I believe I just got logged out. So I think I threw an error there. Yeah, Gnome shell crashed. We killed it by trying to run Kdenlive. Let's do it again. KDEN. Go get them. So we need VLC or Zine. I can definitely install VLC. So it's actually running. I don't know what that crash was initially. But well, anyway, I'll worry about installing the preview. Everything seems to be working correctly. I don't have a clip I can throw into this virtual machine right now. But yeah, it's looking pretty good. I make some templates in Kdenlive, so I really like it. I've got everything set up exactly the way I want it, and for me it works really well. If I was to choose my favorite editor, and I do have Final Cut Pro, I believe it's called, for Mac, which I use very rarely, iMovie, which is quick and simple, which I kind of like, and then finally Kdenlive, which I use the majority of the time, and it seems to work really well for me. So that's pretty cool. And now this is really interesting. The scaling actually looks really good under Fedora 26. That was an issue. All the lettering and wording here did not scale correctly under Fedora 25. So I'm pretty eager to set it up and see how things go. But scaling is looking really good at 1080p so far in Fedora. I mean, I'm actually really impressed. I had problems mostly with Firefox and other applications too, like Kdenlive. So I'm actually really impressed. I'm hoping we've got this whole scaling situation dealt with, and I probably would in that case then use Gnome much more, but everything seems to be looking good. And we've got LibreOffice installed. Yeah, scaling looks great. One of the things I'll have to test out is GIMP, because I had scaling issues with GIMP, of course. And I don't think there's much that can be done about it, because the icons that are used, I don't think they will scale correctly no matter what. But I am running at 1080p, but let's do a DNF install GIMP and see what happens. It'll definitely tell me a lot about how things have come along with Fedora 26. Alright, we've got GIMP installed, so let's go ahead and run it. See how things are looking scaling wise. I don't think it's really scaling that much better than it ever has. All these interfaces look fine, but I'm pretty sure once I go to 4K, these things are going to become tiny little dots just as they usually are. But at that, I'm pretty sure is a direct result of GIMP itself and these icons that are being used. There's no different versions and no scaling built in. So that's at least what I've read. But anyway, got my tools installed. They seem to install really well. And it does look to me like Fedora has 26 is definitely ready for prime time. I probably will give it another week, and then I will do an inline upgrade on Fedora 25. Fedora 25 was a clean install, so it's not like I've got too much legacy stuff going on there, and I usually don't worry about that anyway, because honestly all you're doing is a DNF update from Fedora 25 to 26, and like I told you before, it's really an evolutionary thing, so I don't worry too much about it. But very impressed with Fedora 26. Definitely gets a thumbs up from me, and it's very encouraging. And I think shortly here I'll have another video, and we're going to go ahead and do that upgrade and see what we end up with. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, you know the usual, like, subscribe, and hopefully share and get the word out there. And hopefully, if you would consider it, you could buy me a cup of coffee on Patreon, throw $1 my way maybe once a month if you're enjoying the videos. If not, I understand completely. Don't feel obligated to do stuff like that, because I just enjoy making the videos. And you know, it would be a good thing if I could cut back a little bit on the teaching that I'm doing and do more videos, but on the other hand, I'll do what the market requests. Thanks for watching. See you next time on Fast Gadgets.